All right, what's up, everyone? Chrono Knight back here with another video, and today I would like to talk to you guys about my deck profile that I just played in the most recent tournament. Introducing Ozos. Really love this deck, and so for this video, I want to kind of give a breakdown about my thought process building it, some changes I made after playtesting, and how it helped me perform in this previous tournament. So, spoiler alert, but I did make it to the grand finals. Unfortunately, lost a very close 1-2 set. But I'm going to do a separate video kind of talking about um, my thought process like during the games and maybe like going over some of the VODs and things like that. But for now, I just wanted to kind of um, introduce the deck profile and how the deck is supposed to work because people are like really liking it. I really loved it the way it came out, and the opportunities for me to kind of showcase what it could do. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump right in. And so, like I said, this is the Ozo deck. I originally wanted to call it like a Earth deck because it has like that weird balance of like rock, water, sunlight, and grass. And so if you look at like the Gaia's planet itself, it's kind of like very inspirational as far as like why I picked the cards that I picked. Um so let's jump right in. So I wanted to utilize the power of the Ozo Baby core along with the strength and the pressure that Ozo Titan can put on a lot of players. Um, when I first was going into this tournament, I was thinking about what deck I wanted to bring. I really did not want to bring Blue Flames because I felt like there were a couple key weaknesses, and it was going to be a little bit too expected. And so, as I expected, like a lot of people teched for it already, and it can put you in a position where you gotta kind of be a little high rolly, and the econ can be a little fragile, especially if you get caught off guard at certain moments. And so I wanted to build something that would be good into Blue Flames, or at least comparable, but also give me a really good like coverage as far as different matches and different planets and decks that I might see. In playtesting, I started to see a lot of different things. Polysium mixed with Soul Shroom, Blue Flames, Shape Knights is still a thing you have to respect. Guileless mid range, and then heck, even in the last tournament, uh, bugs. I think it was shroom bugs, but burrow bugs won the tournament. And so it's like it's too many things that were running around for me to really justify just sticking with blue flames, especially when they would be expected. And I knew something like this would not be expected, but would give me a lot of tools that I could use to get some wins, right? Excuse me. So the point of using the babies is that every time you play one of the babies, they go +1. It gives you a lot of synergy, and when played correctly, the Soul Shroom becomes live a lot more consistently than most decks are able to produce it. So a lot of decks rely on like Dark Spark Diabolus, milling 4 cards. So you're getting rid of 4 cards out of your deck, hoping that you hit certain planet types. And I figured why not just run the exact 4 planets that I need and use those in a synergistic type of way. And that's what I did, and it worked out really well. And so every time you use one of the Ozo blocks, so um, the gray barrow gets you to Ozo Bam gets you to Ozo Kai gets you to Ozo Bam. And so as you can see, like it creates a nice little triangle. And the beauty about that is not only do when they trade pretty efficiently, because a lot of cards in the current meta have low health, especially if you think about like the blue flame matchup, like a lot of stuff is low health, it just hits really hard. So it trades really well on the low end, goes +1 because it gives me another material. And then that material helps me set up for the big Ozo. Now, the thing that I think a lot of people were overlooking and they started to notice as I progressed through the tournament is that yes, I'm going +1 with the baby, but it's also thinning and allowing me to get to my activators and resource cards way more consistently than I would otherwise. Like just drawing straight up, sometimes I would draw into these creatures. But imagine if I kind of handpick the creatures out of the deck and then I start drawing. Now I'm guaranteeing that my non-engine cards are coming into my hand a lot more consistently. And so that was the game plan. I wanted something that could deck thin and have a decent power level and power ceiling. So I guess we can start off with going with the obvious choices. So the ace of the deck, in my opinion, is Ozo the Titan of Justice, which is why I put it in the first slot. Um, this card says once per turn, you can reveal 3 of your handed and/or zone creatures, except this card, which is very important. Um, one Barrow, one Gaios, and one Syndian to draw a card or kill a card. So with this body, once it's set up consistently, it can become pressure by clearing boards and hitting for 3 points. And also, if I already have an advantage, I can kind of snowball the advantage by continuously drawing more cards. And so it becomes a little bit sticky and very awkward to kill. And particularly in the blue flame matchup, um, Jakra can't hit over it naturally, and so you either have to burn a Motown counter ability to go plus 50, or you have to rely on having Zomato. And it also walls off the Laji, which is very important too, because a lot of times people want to use Laji before Jakra in order to get to the tower. Um, and in a lot of cases, it became like an awkward thing for my opponent to remove. And then by the time they removed it, I was more equipped to handle Jocker or whatever 2 creature board they tried to put up. And the game plan against Blue Flames is that you wall them off to slow them down, and then you trade more efficiently through the hand. And in most cases, especially in my training games, they run out of gas as far as stars before you do, and I can play on the low end a lot more efficiently than they can, especially with things like Rowdy and Serp or using the Ozo babies, and even Orboff was a really good addition to the deck as well. Moving into Serp, so Great Serp, I wanted to have this card because um, I needed a 4th planet, and I wanted the 4th planet to not be too distracting from the main core, which is the Barrow, Gaios, and Syndian. But something I felt like I was missing some damage output. I didn't want to put all the pressure on Ozo to get every single bit of damage. Um, and usually Ozo gets me 6 to 9 points. And so I'm like, where's my other damage gonna come from? And Great Serp was the perfect pick. Um, because it was cheap to bring out and I could time it well where Ozo applies pressure or my other cards apply pressure. And then when I have really good openings, I plop down Serp and hit them for 5. But it was also really good to kind of neutralize certain cards I didn't want to pop off either. For example, like Droplets, Waku, Lightning Squaws, um, even for Cell Sign, like canceling out for Cell Sign came up a little bit. And so that was just really good. Moving on next to Avalanche Overlord. So originally the deck had 2 before the tournament. And every time I played my testing games, I was like, this just does not feel right. Something was off about it. Like, yes, I needed the Barrow Planet and I wanted something that was useful. And the pickings for Barrow creatures was pretty slim. And I was like, I don't feel like every game I need 2 copies of Overlord. Whenever I played it and it was impactful, it was only because of 1 copy. And so I figured, let me just cut it and look for another creature. Now, I'm going to skip over a dog because that's pretty obvious why I picked that one, but I'll talk about the ratio of 1 in just a second. So jumping over to Boominator, after I cut the 1 Avalanche Overlord, I was thinking, well, how can I add a Barrow creature to maintain the consistency for my Soulstrom, but have something that's impactful? And I thought about using Atatrox, but the problem with Atatrox is that the playstyle of this deck is actually not super stally. It's more like shifting momentum. And so at every time possible, I wanted to take control of the board, have good board presence, and then keep like overwhelming my opponent. And I felt like Adatrox sometimes could just sit there in the zone, and my opponent could just like let it just literally sit there like a rock. Because I can't use the Barrow ability to switch it to a 200 power. And so sitting at 60 power is not doing enough. It's not impactful and would actually be counterintuitive to what I want to do with the deck. So going into Boominator, I figured, oh, this is great because Boominator itself could hit for 3 by powering it up itself. Or, which happened a lot in the tournament, is if it stands side by side with my Ozo, which comes back pretty quickly with Soulstrom, or my cheap Serpent, that I can give both of them plus 150, and that is even more pressure. And so force, excuse me, my 470 would go up to 620. So instead of hitting for five, I'm hitting for six. And my 310 would go to 460. So instead of hitting for three, I would hit for five. And both of those situations actually came up. And so Boominator is an interesting card where the health is kind of sticky. It costs 5 stars, which is manageable, and it can really help me blow through certain boards or get a lot of damage in one turn. So after going through the barrel list, I was like, this is the perfect pick. Um, the one blur is pretty fine. Sometimes you do feel like you need a little bit more Pelisium, but the way to compensate for that is just timing of the deck. Like contrary to most APC decks, you're not actually rushing to get SERP. You're using SERP at the right time in order to capitalize on the momentum that you built or your hand advantage. And so the one blurred copy was just fine. It just added a little consistency for me to get my rowdy. But the way that the deck is built, it thins out cards very consistently and it has really solid draw power, which is two things you really, really need, especially going against the Blue Flames. So yeah, I talked about the babies already. Orbov was an interesting pick as well. Now, my rationale for Orbov was very similar to the Avalanche Boominator combo, where I typically only spent every game I will use only one copy of Beast, and the second copy would be a little bit too expensive. The issue is that the deck, um, I'll talk about this resource down here in just a second, but the deck, you have to be kind of careful with your star management, especially before you get your Soul Shroom set up. And so I wanted a creature that kind of added a little bit of defense, could be a nice Syndian card that could sit in my hand as material, but also be like impactful on the field. And Orboff was the perfect pick. The other option for this was Shakafly. The thing I didn't like about Shacklefy, wow, I don't even know if I'm saying that right, Shakafly, is that if you, once it dies, their turn ends. Sometimes I G crash with my creatures already on the board just to guarantee Soul Shroom and take over the game state. And so I didn't want to kill my own Shakafly in my own turn because sometimes I would kill my own creatures as part of my like tactics offensively. And so Orbuff was the perfect replacement because even at 70/70, it kills all of the blue flames and does pretty well against the other smaller stuff like Droplet and Thorngabork. So that's why I picked that. Um, okay, so then skipping past Rowdy, we talked about that. Going into Thorn and Gluff, this was just a very, very good synergistic thing. This felt like another mini Ozo baby type of effect, right? So if you start to notice how like everything searches something else, the deck starts to blend really well. Like Blur searches Rowdy, each Ozo searches one of the other in the form of a triangle. Thorn can search for Gluh. And so it put me in a position where no matter what matchup I was in, I felt like I was always able to have an answer to my opponent's board. Very rarely did I feel like, oh man, I'm kind of stuck. In most cases, I was like, okay, I have some way to out this. And even at the worst, when I needed to kind of wall off with the smaller creatures, it helped me set up for a good clapback on the next turn. And so whenever I drew Thorn, I mean, I could just play Thorn straight up. And if you attack into it, I draw and I go +1. If I need to clear your board, I'll sacrifice the Thorn to get Gluh, and then use Gluh's ability to kill a creature and draw 2. And then even in vice versa, if I have Gluh and Tree in hand, you play the Gluh, use the Tree to kill a creature. At the end of your turn, you're going to draw 2. But before you draw your 2, you use the Gaios ability to kill Gluh to search for Thorn, and then you set up Thorn. So before you're drawing 2, you're also thinning the deck out by 1 extra card, which is super important because when you draw those +2, now you're increasing the chances that you draw into one of your non-engine cards that are going to help you, like either your battle activators or Galaxy Crash or another Soul Shroom, things like that. And so I was really happy with how that core like easily fit into what the game plan was for this deck. Moving over to Abomination Tomb. Abomination Tomb is just really good and it fits well with this deck. A lot of times you need the right planet type to sit next to Ozo, or you can bring back Ozo itself. Maybe one game I think I did bring back Rowdy because I had a Serpent hand and I just needed some material to get it on the field. So Abomination Tomb really helps and plays into the flexibility of the deck. And at its core, the deck does not operate super expensively. When I cut the Avalanche and I cut the Beast, I really help my star economy because this is seven, this is seven, this is six, and this is five. And all the other stuff is really, really cheap. And so thinking about Abomination Tomb, bringing back Ozo, or a card to sit next to Ozo. The beauty about the effect is that it could be a combination of cards that are in your hand or on your field. And so a lot of times I would have one or two materials in my hand and just needed another one on the field, or already I would have one on the field and I would draw into the other one. And Abomination Tomb just helped that consistency. Um, oops, I don't know why that closed like that. I'm just gonna refresh my page real quick. Pardon me, pardon me, pardon me. Okay, we're back. Sorry. I try to do these in one take. Sorry, guys. Soulstrom, obviously, really good card. If you have 4 planets that are different, free play one of those creatures. Soulstrom was literally just another um, similar feel to Abomination Tomb where I could toolbox whatever card I needed at the time. Your primary targets are usually Ozo. And if you already have the board advantage, then you would go for like Serp to like really clear things out. I ended up playing against Shroom Polysium as well. And so when they have those creatures that are over 400, sometimes I would Soul Shroom my Avalanche, and then that's a board clear as well. So these are usually your main 3 targets for Soul Shroom. I already talked about Gook, Galaxy Crash. Galaxy Crash is just a really good staple. Clearing the board presence, and then the way that this deck could still have good offensive pressure, is you're never mad to see this. And because of the consistency of the deck, searching for certain things to thin out your cards, I saw Galaxy Crash very consistently, more than I would in almost any other deck that I've played. Next is Star Mosaic. Now, Star Mosaic was a last minute pick for me because in testing, I noticed that if my opponent catches me on a particular turn where I've invested a little bit too many stars, I'm in a position where I'm like stalled out. Or if I draw the materials that I need in my hand and I want to go for pressure, I was lacking like some stars. Because as you can see, the deck only has one card set up for zone creation, right? So you normally want to go for 2 creature zone, 2 battle zone, 1 resource zone. I'm not running Zamora's Egg, which could be a replacement. The double beast felt a little bit too expensive. And so Star Mosaic was just perfect. Most of the time, by the time I play it, I already have 4 to 5 zones. So every time I drew this card, it was an extra 4 to 5, sometimes 6 stars right off the bat, which allowed me to go for a deeper play. So I was super, super happy with Star Mosaic as a econ pick, and it really helped me this tournament. Now, something I thought about now in this slot, I have Nightmare Matter. Before this slot, I had EV, which is Erratic Void. Erratic Void says when your opponent free plays a creature or adds a creature to its hand that is 4 stars or higher, you can kill that card. I'm sorry. I think if you just free play it, then it kills the card. Seal of Eternity is the one adding to hand. Um, 1 second. Okay. And so, for lack of better words, I wanted to have something that was a little bit of a better pick because it seemed a little bit too situational for the Erratic Void and Seal of Eternity picks. So I went with Nightmare Matter. Nightmare Matter felt really, really, really good because it punished my opponent for attacking into my lower end creatures. And like I said before, sometimes you set up the lower end creatures to prepare for Ozo coming out. And so because their health is pretty low on the most part, I wanted something that could kind of punish them. And so in the midst of me setting up for the big play, I punished them, and then we're good to go on the next turn. Super Bossy Trampoline was an interesting pick as well. In testing, I kind of wanted something similar to Nightmare Matter that punished my opponent for using a creature ability to get rid of my stuff because Ozo is very sticky. Serp is very sticky. And even when I have Avalanche on the floor on the field, it's a little awkward to get rid of. Um, and so a lot of the removal in the current format is around creature abilities. And so main decking trampoline actually came up quite a few times in the tournament where a Jokra shuffle was going to happen. Um, Even Gabasaurus almost happened a few times, and I had super bouncy trampoline, and it could really cripple your opponent and put them in a very bad position. And the way the deck is set up, like I said before, because I'm going +1, +2, sometimes even a 3 card advantage. Um, when your opponent commits to big plays and they get crushed like that, sometimes that kind of ends the game on the spot. Like you have such an overwhelming advantage that you can kind of coast to your 20 points, and then that'll be it. And then the last 3 cards is Planetary Field, Beast of the Black Hole, AAA. Once again, staples, just like Galaxy Crash. Um, I would not suggest taking these out in the current format. You need all 3 of these, to be fair. Okay, so that is the main deck. Now we're going to briefly talk about the side deck. Um, and like I said, I'll do a separate video going a little bit into some of my matches and my thought process and how you can utilize certain combos. Um, because I think this is the type of deck that you have to kind of like see in action to really understand like how powerful it is. Because on paper, you're like, okay, like it does a little bit of things, but when you see how comfortable it is, like against certain situations that you normally wouldn't be able to get out of, then you start to really appreciate what the deck can do. But I'll talk about that in another video. All right, going on to my sideboard. The sideboard was pretty difficult to put together um, because the nature of the deck being so tight. Like I said, everything kind of searches for something else. There's not many things you want to like swap out too much. And so a lot of times I would swap out one active for another or one resource for another. Very rarely did I cut a creature because I needed that synergy to make sure Soulstrom was always active. So as far as my picks, Monument to Creation, I just wanted something that kind of challenged the Blue Flames draw power, particularly when they have 2 moons. And so my deck thins out a lot and draws really well. So against regular Shias with no moons or just 1 moon in general, I do really, really well. But I felt like in testing that when I go against people with 2 moons, um, they could keep up or exceed my card advantage. And that's like the whole theme of the deck. And so I wanted to stay on top of that as far as what the strength of the deck really is. Calamask was an interesting pick. So I went with Calamask because I was thinking about um well, Calamask actually was supposed to be swapped before the tournament started, but I forgot to take it out. Um, when I said that Nightmare Matter used to be Erratic Void, or I was thinking about Seal of Eternity, the goal was to try to trap Blue Flame players bringing out their tower. And so I wanted to catch them and play Seal of Eternity or Erratic Void to kill Jokra once it comes back, and then use Calamask to snipe the tower, or use Ozo to snipe the tower. And so this was just like an extra card that could get rid of their tower and really cripple them, and for the most part, probably just end the game outright. It's also useful against like stally decks or decks that use permanent resources too. So it wasn't the worst pick, but it didn't see any play this tournament, and so I would probably suggest switching it for something more impactful. Shape Knight Scorn. I just wanted to respect the Shape Knight matchup. After I looked at the previous tournament deck list, Shape Knight still did pretty good and definitely had a lot of potential. And so I was like, I did not want to take the risk of not being prepared for them because they were a decent pick to show up this tournament. Shockwave 8, because I wanted just one resource card that could be impactful against like Polysium decks because they were popping up in my testing games. And so I just wanted to respect the matchup and take a little bit of pressure off of Avalanche Overlord because a lot of times you don't want to waste a lot of stars just to clear a board when you can do something like play a resource card. And then last but not least, I played Abandonment, which came up quite a bit this tournament because there's a lot of decks that try to utilize Soulstrom or play APC type cores. And so it was just a really good pick. It even helped me in the grand finals. And so my opponent in the grand finals swapped out their planet card for Syndian because they was respecting Shape Knights, and it kind of incidentally hit my deck because they would put in Deep Space Lighthouse as well and just take over my Ozo. And so switching a planet card to Syndian meant that the rest of their deck didn't have any synergy. And then Abandonment is actually playable in games 2 and game 3, which came up and was very helpful. And so, yeah, I'll end it off right there. But yeah, shout out to the Ozos getting a top placement and jumping right into the meta, which I would argue is a tier 1 deck, and getting me a second place in this tournament, and just really getting a little bit of refreshment to the format instead of just a lot of Blue Flames and Shape Knights running around. It just really inspires people to kind of look at other strategies and bring unique and fun decks to the tournaments. So I had a ton of fun with this deck. Comment below if I should change the name of the deck or call it something different. If you are inspired to play it, please by all means copy the list and check out the Chaos Galaxy Discord. Buy some cards from Zach. He's an amazing card creator, an artist. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Peace.